Hey, what's up? This is Joshua, daily video vlog. It is early April and there is a slight flurry here in Minneapolis. Hopefully you'll be able to catch it and we'll inject some novelty into the proceedings here. Today's video, I want to talk about something kind of different. I want to talk about the idea of freedom of speech and going past the notion where people say that the freedom of speech is really only a governmental issue, that the only thing that matters is that the government doesn't interfere. I think on the face of it, there's some logic to that, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure if that's actually the world that any of us want to live in. So a couple years ago, a friend of mine who has to buy a lot of supplies from Uline, the packing and shipping company, we were talking about the back page of Uline very often has these like kind of editorials in them from the owners, just sort of like typical complaining about politics, and it was like sort of leaning towards Tea Party politics. And my friend said that they were looking to find a different, oh man, it's a garbage truck, it's really loud. I'm gonna cut through here. Okay, they were looking to find a different supplier for their stuff, like poster tubes, bags, mailing supplies, etc. Basically, they wanted to find a supplier that could give them all the same stuff, but that the last page of their catalogs didn't espouse Tea Party politics. And I just sort of played this back for him, and I said, okay, I just want to make sure I got this straight. You are saying that because they believe something that you don't believe, and because they're vocal about it, that they shouldn't make any money. Because if everyone has this sort of left-leaning politics that we have, should we boycott this company for not believing the same things as us? Or should we at least be telling them, you need to be quiet, you're not allowed to speak? And my friend thought about that and said, no, I guess I wouldn't want to do that. Now, it would be different if we could investigate and determine whether Uline was a propaganda fundraising arm of the Tea Party. But considering that Uline has been around decades longer than the Tea Party, that does not seem likely. It's probably just run by some conservative Midwesterners who don't want to pay higher taxes. And who knows what else they believe. They probably are like against the minimum wage, I don't know. But the point is, they believe something and they're vocal about it. And I believe things and I'm vocal about them too. Would I really think it would be fair to be boycotted because I have a fairly heavy duty belief in freedom of speech? Do I think it would, does it seem reasonable that someone could read some of my tweets and then go and let my work know, I can no longer work with you, that guy retweeted something that I find offensive, or that guy's pro-choice, or that guy's an atheist, or whatever it is? That strikes me as ridiculous. And, you know, the exception that everyone always comes up is like, well, what if you found out your baker is a neo-Nazi? Well, here's the thing, and this is going to make me a dick. I think if you're a neo-Nazi, your brain doesn't quite work right anyway, and it would be that much more fucked up for me to deprive you of your ability to make an income. Like, how could that possibly be a good thing? You know, or if like the dude from I don't know, like the dude from Burzum, right? He's a Nazi, and kind of a prick and a murderer. The argument that people always bring up is, well, like that you shouldn't listen to Burzum, or you shouldn't buy a Burzum record. What if making that music is the only thing that dude does that is a worthwhile activity. You really think like you're gonna boycott his music? Like, what's the end result there? Are you hoping he will kill himself? That's an end game that I couldn't possibly support. Once you get into this kind of thing of where everyone has to pass your little criteria for what they are and are not allowed to talk about or think, you're basically getting into that territory. And yeah, and I think I had somebody say this to me today, that like, well, I like your podcast, but then you peddle this stuff. And it was like, I pulled a quote from an article. I highlighted the part that was relevant to what I was saying. The next quote trolled the whatever social justice warriors, PC police, whatever you want to call them, the Tumblr set, whatever. It trolled them, and he was basically like accusing me of peddling that. Now, sure, I retweeted that thing. I might also tell you to listen to a Coogee rap song that talks about killing people. Doesn't mean I think that anyone should kill anyone. It doesn't mean I like agree with every point. And it certainly strikes me as ridiculous. Like, I don't agree with half of what shows up in my Twitter. I have like Hotep guys that seem to hate white guys in my Twitter. I have white supremacists in my Twitter. I have feminists who say stuff that I don't believe in. I have all kinds of people in there, super religious people, and super atheist people. Like, the threshold is basically, do you entertain me or provide me with something useful more than you annoy me or give me something to disagree with? And in reality, I think the only thing that I'm capable of being offended by, beyond maybe the only thing I'm really capable of being offended by is documentation of actions that are so unbelievably upsetting. You know, like photos of ISIS throwing gay men off roofs. I find that offensive. But of course I find the action offensive, and then having to see the documentation is offensive. And then people who think that other people should be deprived of their ability to make a living or to operate in the world because you disagree with them. And as far as I can see, the slippery slope, there is a slippery slope, because you see what happens with these sort of circles that are all about apologies and thought policing, is eventually they start to turn on and eat each other. Like some kind of, like they're run out of enemies and the only enemy left is now within. And none of it seemed worth a thing. None of it seemed productive. None of it seems helpful. And none of it changes minds. You seriously think, like, let's say you, like your local bakery owner, it comes out that he's a neo-Nazi. And I don't know how it comes out. Maybe he goes to neo-Nazi meetings. Maybe he posts on a neo-Nazi, like he posts on Stormfront and somebody doxed him. So by the argument that everyone presents, I am supposed to boycott him. Okay, cool. So I boycott him. Now, when do I get to stop boycotting him? Because once he apologizes for his neo-Nazi beliefs, so we're almost certainly he did not rescind, because nobody just rescinds their beliefs because they've been punished. They just hide them from view. Then we're going to say, well, you can't just say some words and then think everything's okay. Even though the whole thing we're upset about is words. So he apologizes, cool. Then what? Like, what's the next step? Okay, you need to do a workshop. Cool, he does a workshop. You seriously think that somebody who's being basically blackmailed and extorted into adopting a new worldview is really gonna adopt it? You know, there's those Japanese fishermen that were kidnapped by North Korea and held hostage for 20 years. They tried for decades to re-educate those dudes, and it was pointless. And they eventually just sent them back to Japan. You can't force people to adopt new beliefs through punishment. It's not going to work. All you're going to do is make those people hide their beliefs. And as ugly as some of those beliefs are, I'd rather they be out in the open and I can be like aware of them than having everyone running around with these secret agendas of what they actually think. Is horrifying. And 5 years ago, I would have been in that same boat. oh, that person believes this, they're a monster, boycott them. But I can't even begin to relate to that now. It embarrasses me that I ever thought that listening to NWA should be a guilty pleasure. You know, yeah, Dr. Dre did some fucked up stuff. Maybe that's Dr. Dre's only redeeming quality as a human being is music. How does it make any sense to punish that? It's not going to make him a better human being. And you know, the sort of the same thing, like, great, that person doesn't believe the same stuff as you. It doesn't make them a monster. You know, if you want to go so far as to say, like, to judge their actions, cool. But even still, it's like, if we're sitting here punishing Dr. Dre, let's see, D. Barnes was 1990, 26 years later, is that really so productive? Yeah, I don't think so. Like, what's he gonna change today? Probably nothing. And then he's gonna apologize, and then everyone's gonna say, oh, well, that apology doesn't change what happened. Yeah, you're right, it doesn't change what happened. So at this point, what's the point of even talking about it? Yeah, I don't know. I think if there was one point at which I have an almost religious belief, like an article of faith, it would be on this point that, yeah, the government should not interfere with your free speech. The First Amendment guarantees that. But you, as an American citizen, should value that going well beyond the government. That you should allow people to speak in the ways that they want to, and that you're welcome to argue with it. You're welcome to put out dissenting opinions, but that to actually physically try to stop people from speaking makes you a monster. All right, thanks for watching.